Hello, BookTube. All right, we're back for part 2 of my 7.5K Q&A. We're just going to barrel on here in an attempt to get these done in 4 or 5 videos. Let's see. Our next is from st.donoghue, #1 fan. I've seen comments made by this person who has me as an avatar. There's somebody out there called st.donoghue, #1 fan. I checked. It's not Frida. Question number 1. What is the best way to worship you? And question number 2, have you ever been creeped out by one of your fans? Well, I have now, thanks. Well, the best way to worship me is to send me mega stuffed Oreos. But in this case, as in all cases, whether it's Thor or Yahweh or Elohim, I would say worship is bad. Let's see here. João Miguel Paleo? Since you said before that you read Portuguese literature, I was really curious to know if you had any favorites. Which books did you enjoy the most from those you read? Also, what are your thoughts on Portuguese literature in general? I don't know enough about it to have general thoughts. I have absolutely loved I forget who did it. It might have been Penguin or Harper or somebody came out with 2 volumes of Saramago, and one of them was his collected nonfiction, and I loved that volume. But that's a predictable answer because I love nonfiction. But I don't know enough about Portuguese literature to start rattling off favorites with nuance. Joseph Green says, number 1, thoughts on Josephine Winslow Johnson's Now in November? Don't think I've read it. And question number 2, when their country is slouching towards autocracy, should citizens seriously consider expatriation? And assuming the world's borders reopen to Americans, at what point in this sad nightmare should one get out of Dodge? It is difficult, following the day-to-day headlines, to comprehend America's slide away from democracy. I agree. The twilight becomes darkness before you can say peace for our time. Okay, well, you ask a practical question in the midst of all that. And that I've had this practical question before from other people. When should I leave? Especially students of history who look back on the 1930s in Germany and say, well, didn't these Germans in Berlin and Wiesbaden and wherever, didn't they see what was happening? Why didn't they emigrate to France, although that would have been a short-sighted decision, or to Switzerland, or to America? Why did so many of them wait so long? Why did they wait? That happens when you look at Germany in the 1930s. It also happens when you look at Germany in the year 1945, when you see, kerchiefed women and men in rags living in bombed-out hovels, living in ruins. And they didn't leave. They were ordinary Germans who didn't leave. And you look at them and you think, with the smug hindsight of history, you look at them and you think, why didn't they know any better? Why didn't they leave in 1933 when the borders were still wide open and they were still able to do it? In 1942, an adult job-holding, tax-paying German was not allowed to leave the country. But in 1933, they were. And you look back and you wonder, well, like I mentioned in the last Q&A, no histories of that time period are going to read for me the same as they did before. Now all of my sympathies are with those ordinary Germans because we have seen everything we need to see here in America. We have seen endless orgies of violence conducted by police against peaceful protesters. We have seen, the most telling detail of all for me, unidentified, anonymous, fully armored and bearing military weapon, armed goons. Masked, goggled, anonymous armed goons in ranks. You take one look at them. There are many, many pictures online. Take one look at them and you realize these guys never went through any kind of training. And that is what history will reveal. When the histories of this period are written, historians will discover that those masked militia, those masked, I shouldn't call them militia, they're not official in any way. I've heard them referred to on the news as unidentified federal officers. If they're unidentified, they aren't federal officers. And they aren't anyway. They've never sworn an oath to anyone but Donald Trump. They are a private army. And there's a lot more of them than we've seen on the news. A lot more. You need to take one look at them to know that these are just private, LARPing Donald Trump supporters with live ammo. When you look at something like that, or police just bludgeoning and kidnapping civilians without any warrant, without any probable cause, when you look at the Republican Party in the Senate packing the judicial in America on every level with party apparatchik, unqualified judges who will do what the party wants politically rather than what the letter of the law says, that all happened. All of this happened in the 1930s in Germany. The takeover of the judicial was absolutely crucial to the Nazi Party. the creating an atmosphere of totally unaccountable terror in the streets was absolutely crucial, and so on and so forth. And you look at all that now, and you think, well, when should I leave? If I'm an American, when does this reach the point where it's not going to come back, and where it would be lunacy for me and my kids to stay here? And I would argue that 1930s Germany is the perfect template of when to leave. And that is when the purges start. When the purges start in universities and workplaces, that's when to leave. Probably by then the borders will still be open. You will still be able to go. And I would suggest that you go somewhere that is not contiguous. Don't go to Canada or Mexico. They will be the cheapest options. But if you can at all afford it, and go somewhere else. Go to some other part of the democratic world. Because when the slide happens in America, it's going to happen a lot more abruptly and a lot more completely than it did in Nazi Germany. So I right now, it is still possible to be a free American to some extent. But that won't stay true at all. When Donald Trump resumes power in 2021, and especially when he prorogues power to himself or an immediate blood relative in 2024, by then it will be too late. Wait for purges. Wait for, well, we can't beat him, so we're going to join him. And, so I'm asking you, Mr. Jenkins, I know you teach math here at this local high school, but I'm wondering how you voted. But we shall see. I myself don't believe, since the 20th of June in 2020, I don't believe that there's a chance for America to avoid that. But I could be wrong. We shall see. We shall see. I wasn't factoring in a pandemic, so I might be wrong. Let's see here. Anthony Suppa says, keeping in mind that you referred to my beloved cat as an unblinking spot of Satan. Yes, I heard from quite a few cat owners that phrase stuck in their minds. Here are my questions. Number 1, have you ever read Beowulf? Number 2, have you ever been to New York? Oh, okay, all right. Have you were on a spaceship bound for Mars and could choose only between Oliver Twist, Nicholas Nickleby, or Dombey and Son? Which one would bring you? And then his PS is, I think we're even now, because he's asking there a series of the kinds of questions that I've been pretty vocal on this channel. I can't stand self-evident questions or these dumb. You're in a burning building, your limbs are falling off. You can only pick one book and carry it out in your mouth, etc., etc. What is it? I don't see any value to such. He's mocking. He's got his revenge for me calling his unblinking spawn of Satan an unblinking spawn of Satan. So, how do we do it? Okay. Doctrined Marxist has a barrage of questions. Number 1, you said you've been to the Soviet Union. What years and how was it like there? Better or worse than the U.S.? I've been to the Soviet Union a few times, yes. And it was worse than the U.S. at the time, of course. Because, especially if you were in a place where the politics were unavoidable. It was when you went out into the country, the politics were gone completely, just like in China. You went out into the country, the politics were almost invisible, and you could just get to know the people. Excuse me. But even so, it was better. It was better in the U.S. at all the times that I went, because the U.S. had more material abundance. Question number 2: you say you are patriotic for the country you live in. I am. I love the United States. Why, and what do you think about the common critiques of America today? That it was built on slavery, that it built on stolen land. I can love a country and still wish that it would correct its ways. Still wish that it would improve itself. And I do. America has been the source and the template, the feeding ground for a greater amount of personal freedom for a greater number of people than virtually any other country in the history of the world. And personal freedom for the greatest number of people, individual people, is a good thing. It's a very, very good thing. Frida, stop that. Come here. Stop that. Sorry, I think she was chewing on something. Let's see here. Question number 3: what is your opinion on socialism, communism, Marxism? See, this could have been in Anthony Suppa's list of my bête noire questions, because there's no way that I can answer that. I would need 4 hours just to talk about that without doing any of the other questions. What is my opinion on socialism, communism, Marxism? What works have you read relating to Marxism or Marx in general? Quite a few, including. Come here. Come up here. Come up here. Sorry about this. I'll be right back. Okay, stop. All right? Stop. Okay, good. Okay. All right, we'll hope for the best there. Let's see here. Question number 4. What's your political stance? Left-wing, right-wing, centrist, independent? It's actually none of the above. What do you like most about your political ideology? The same thing everyone likes about their political ideology. I like the thing I like most about mine is that it's completely correct and all the rest of you are wrong. And what are some things that made you who you politically are? These are not questions I can do in a Q&A. These are discussion questions for a 2-hour video. Reading, thinking, witnessing firsthand a large number of political systems, all of those things went into making me who I am politically. Question number 5, what is capitalism for you? Do you think modern critiques of capitalism are enough for it to be abolished? I don't agree that capitalism should be abolished. For me, capitalism is infinitely improvable, as is the United States, but in its basic form, I don't think it's toxic or poisonous the way a lot of commentators on YouTube seem to think. Question number 6, are you married and have children, and is family important to you? I was married several times, 8, 9, 11 times to Deb, and we have had children, but we never kept any of them because they were always a great bally bother. But now I'm single and ready to mingle. And family important to you? I make my own family. Blood family isn't important to me, no. Not just because of that. Question number 7. If you could go back to the European Renaissance, where would you go and why? I would go to Rotterdam. And who would you meet? I would probably meet Erasmus. And what's your favorite underrated or most unknown person during that time period? Like a writer, a poet, a philosopher. We could easily include Erasmus. He's not known anymore. And question number 8. Where do you mostly purchase your Penguin Classics or Oxford World Classics? Used bookstores, charity shops, that sort of thing. Penguins, I get some Penguins in the mail. At least I did before the pandemic. But charity shops, used bookstores, I never buy them new. Let's see here. How are we doing? Okay. Several Gecko says, a couple of questions on a similar theme. I know you've mentioned dreams before in one of your 3,000 videos, but seeing as you only sleep 2 hours, do you ever have those dreams which are absolute sagas that feel like they occupy weeks of real time? Well, yes, but the amount of time that I sleep has nothing to do with that. When you are sleeping, your sleeping mind can affect the chemical matrices in your brain that perceive the passage of time. So those long sagas of yours, those dreams that feel like long, unending sagas, they don't actually take more than a few minutes. Your sense of the passage and duration of time is not connected to the outside world. It's biochemically generated. It is connected to the outside world, but only through the biochemistry of your brain. And that biochemistry can be altered. You can manipulate that sense while you're awake. In a neuropsychology lab, a neurology lab, it's possible for a neurologist while you're awake, because you can be done without anesthesia. It's possible for them to stimulate that feeling in you while you're awake, so that they're asking you questions and you feel like the interview is lasting forever, like you've been here all day, when you haven't. It's only been a few minutes. So I can have that feeling even though my dreams are just as short as anybody else's. Let's see here. Lolly Poops says, a question for Steve. What is your favorite thing about Frida? My favorite thing about her is her extremely distinct personality. She is wedged against me right now. Her extremely distinct personality. I know that's true for any dog, but she has that would probably be my answer for any dog. My favorite thing about her is just her. It's just her nature. She is so incredibly, irreducibly herself. And it's every day is an adventure learning that and learning what she likes to do and what she doesn't like to do. And question for Frida, what is your favorite thing about Steve? Frida, I'm sure, has no favorite things about me. I am a piece of the furniture to her. I am here to satisfy her urges and needs. Although we do have cuddle sessions that are very nice. And I think probably in the heart of winter, when this is an old rackety house, it gets freezing cold in winter, no matter what you can do. Even with a space heater, it gets freezing cold. And I think she probably likes the fact that my body runs a little hot, so she can just wedge herself, under an armpit and be nice and warm. That is the reverse of my previous two dogs. Previously, I had a pointer and a fat little basset hound. And the basset hound was like a stove. She gave off heat in great waves all the time. So in the heart of winter, she was a godsend for my pointer and I. We would just cuddle up around her. She never got cold herself. And she gave off waves and waves of heat all the time. We would just squash ourselves into her folds of flab. It was just delightful. Charlie Wrights says, would you be interested in hosting an Erasmus read-along? Greetings from Rotterdam. Well, hello. Greetings from Rotterdam. I probably will not be doing an Erasmus read-along on this channel. Let's see here. Carrie Williams says, how do you go about choosing what books you want to buy for your personal library and what editions to buy? Well, the same way you do, I'm sure. I hunt around for which editions I like, which editions are, and maybe some pictures, great annotations, that sort of thing. Or if it's a book I don't need annotations with, maybe a great presentation. And in terms of how do I choose the ones that will go in my personal library? My personal library has two layers to it. There's this room that is my sanctum sanctorum. This is my little book room. And these are the sort of the A-rung books. And then there are the other rooms here at Hyde Cottage that have the B-rung books that I very much like, but they don't make their way in here. And unlike most other book accumulating periods in my life, I do not have anything below a B rung. I don't keep anything else. It all goes. But in terms of picking books for those two collections, a lot of it is just blasting things against a barn door and seeing what sticks. I will get a large number of books from a charity shop or the Brattle Bookshop or whatever, and I'll go through them all and read them or reread them and examine them and weigh the value of all of the different editions and slowly sift which ones of those I actually want to keep. This is one of the values of having really cheap books around you for sale, is that you can do that. Although, in 2020, that process, no. Sorry, I'm right in the middle of this. As soon as I'm done with this video, I will attend to whatever's going on here. In 2020, I have been mostly dealing with ebooks, which is it changes the process completely, of course, because you can keep all the ebooks that you find, and also the tactile dimension of all the different editions is gone completely. So it's a scattershot number of methods, same as you, I would imagine. Mabry Book Club says, every once in a while during a mail haul, you won't show a book you've received and skip it. What determines a book unfit to show and talk about on camera? Are they cat books? No, I would show cat books on camera just to mock them, just to attack them. No, there are a number of reasons why I do that. It doesn't happen as often as it seems. I want to stress that because a lot of you think it happens. A lot of you hate it so much that it has taken a place in your imagination as something that happens all the time. It doesn't. It's only happened 3 times. But there are a number of reasons. There are some books, just a couple of books recently, where I want to pretend that I didn't receive them for whatever reason. A large number of complex reasons, but I'm certainly not going to hold them up on camera and talk about them. No, I'm not going to do anything like that and ruin my day. Golden Books TAS says, are you looking forward to the adaptation of Joyce Carol Oates' Blonde? Do you think Anna de Armas will be a good lead? I don't know anything about it. I have no idea, and I don't know that actor's name. Isaiah Armstrong says, from the limited times I've heard you talk about Vladimir Nabokov, it's always with disdain. What do you dislike about his writing? Why do you think Lolita should be considered closer to pornography than good literature? I mostly dislike Nabokov. I think his fiction is fairly weak. Why do I think Lolita should be considered closer to pornography than good literature? I think Lolita should be considered pornography, not closer to. Because it has almost nothing in the way of good literature, and it is explicitly pornographic. So I just think that he was a literary cause celeb, and that has just grown over time. It is cemented over time. But reading his non-Lolita novels lays him bare, I think, for what he is, which is a fairly severely untalented writer. I know I'm in the minority there. Since Nabokov is considered a modernist writer, what do you think of modernist literature with poster writers like Proust, Joyce, Woolf, and T.S. Eliot? I think of modernist literature the way I think of any kind of literature, which is I like it if it's well done. But the thing about modernist literature, the problem with modernist literature and what we might call postmodernist literature, is that they know that. The most charlatan purveyors of those types, those schools of literature, know that that is the tried and true yardstick to use with literature, is how well it's done. They know that, and so, like the beat poets, they took aim at that squarely. Modernist and postmodernist literature took aim at that squarely and said, no. Whether or not something is done well or poorly is just you being the establishment. It's just you being the man. No one can actually say that. They took aim specifically at that kind of accountability because they knew that it was their Achilles heel. So now, you can't say the yardstick that I just mentioned. You can't say, well, is it done well? If it's done well, then I'll probably like it. Who can say if it's done well? I'm going to champion a school of literature, a school of poetry, in which there isn't even a way to tell if it's done well. Specifically because I want to be paid to do no work. But I'm going to stick to it. If it's done well, then I will like it. Scala says, what are your thoughts on the works of Arthur Machen, particularly The Hill of Dreams? I like it. Connor asks a bunch of questions. We have time. Okay. Number one, you've previously said Shakespeare is our greatest writer. What makes him this? When he's on like nobody else in mixing humor and pathos and human understanding. It's just amazing. Just amazing. And also beauty of expression. Everything all together. When he's on. I disagree with bardolaters who say that he is always on. I don't think that's true. But when he's on, which is a large part of his writing, I don't think anybody else really comes close. Question number two. What are your thoughts on South Park? I've laughed at South Park, same as anybody else. It's crude humor, but crude humor can sometimes be very funny. So I've laughed at it. Question number three. Young men today are famously aimless, mostly because their fathers are either bad teachers or not in their lives at all. What are the reasons that this generation of fathers has failed at being fathers? Again, a question that could go on forever. This is not really fit for a quick Q&A. The short answer would be that that generation of fathers, the one that has let down 20-something men today, were such crappy fathers because of how they were parented. They're having a reaction against their own parenting with disastrous results. They're just paralyzed with knowing what to do. And so the results are disastrous. Either they go the authoritarian route or they go the I'm your friend and camp counselor, but I'm not actually your parent route. And as a result, a huge number of 20-something men who have all the unlimited potential for both greatness and stupidity that 20-something young men always have, a huge number of them have nothing. They're nothing. I know that it's not fashionable in the 21st century to say this. I know that it can get you canceled on college campuses. But there are things that fathers can do for their 20-something sons that mothers can't do. Just as there are things mothers can do for their 20-something sons that fathers can't do. And it won't work if only one parent is doing those things. If a father stops, just abrogates his responsibility, the result is going to be a mess. And I know so many 20-something young men that are the proof. They are the proof of the pudding. Because they don't have any idea what to do. They don't even know how to forge a sense of purpose. And the horror of it is that most of them are left up to social media. Social media is a huge part of their life anyway. They go there where there's one toxic actor after another swimming around in those waters. It's terrifying. Tomorrow's Classic says, just a nosy one this time. How do you spend the day of the 4th of July, especially lately? I have a few rituals on the 4th of July I'm not inclined to share on this channel. Lately, some of them were impossible because of the pandemic, but it's one of the two holidays that I take seriously, and that means a lot to me. And my errands tend to take up most of the day until around 1 in the afternoon. Then I come back and spend it with you. And on a brighter note, how do you spend Christmas? Any special rituals or traditions? I don't have any rituals or traditions. The last couple of years, I have had the incredible honor of being invited up to the little old farmhouse in Vermont for Christmas with Mark Richardson and his family. That has been, with Frida, that has been just an amazing thrill of a pleasure, just incredible. Whether I've gone or not, it's the invitation is everything. But invitations for me are a little tricky because they have to include Frida, and that isn't always possible. But I don't have any contact with any blood relatives. I don't have anybody here, so the typical trappings of a Christmas holiday don't really work for me. And if someone can invite me to their home, they would have to invite Frida as well. That usually doesn't work. Otherwise, I just spend Christmas, by myself, reading and writing and that sort of thing. I get presents in the mail from friends, and also, I must admit, from quite a few of you, but I don't unwrap them under a tree or anything like that. And then, how are we doing for time? Okay, we've got a little bit of time. We'll do one more. Sotiro Itsos says some translation-themed questions. Number one, what translations, recent or old or otherwise, of otherwise good books, were remarkably bad? Oh, God, I have no idea. Off the top of my head, I have no idea. I've read translations I didn't like, but I'd have to search through my reading journal to find them. Number two, if you had the choice, which untranslated work of world literature would you choose to be translated to English? I mentioned it the other day when I was talking about Lafcadio Hearn and Japanese ghost stories. There are a couple of huge compendiums of Japanese ghost stories that date back to the time of Shakespeare or even Tale of Genji that they don't have full annotated English language translations. And as far as I know, never have. And that's a crime. That's just terrible. Especially since how enjoyable they are. And which translations do you find more fittingly idiosyncratic? I don't know what that means. After watching the last Q&A, I realized that you have visited Greece, since it's not Australia. This is true. For those of you who are new, I have been everywhere in the world except Australia and the Australian archipelago. And yet, as I often joke, every time I mention that, the first thing the person says in response is, "Oh, really? Have you been to?" And then they name someplace that is not Australia or the Australian archipelago. Meaning the answer is yes. Meaning the answer is yes. And yet, you say, what was it here? After watching the last Q&A, I realized you have visited Greece since it's not Australia. And yet, I'd be willing to bet you a mega stuffed Oreo that the next thing you ask me is going to be, have I ever been to such and such a place? Maybe I'm wrong, though. What places did you visit? For example, have you visited Thessalonica? Yes, I have visited every single inch of Greece. Northern Greece, southern Greece, yes. I have been to Thessalonica. And I like the northern parts of Greece in general. I liked it. In fact, there were some aspects of it that I liked it more than the southern parts. Thomas R.P. says, you often refer to a period of time when you taught literature. In what context? Children, high school, university, and when and where? It was a little bit of high school and some university. Always on a volunteer basis, always on an ad hoc basis. Always a lot of fun. High school, not so much, because the high school experience, the few high school experiences I had were just a quick swap in. There were never anything official. And I got the distinct impression that 90% of a high school classroom teacher's job is discipline. Yelling at people to be quiet, yelling at people to calm down, yelling at people to pay attention. I didn't want to do that all day long, no. I gather from other high school teachers, including a few here on BookTube, not all high schools are like that, but the ones that I saw were. Let's see here. Also, the last Q&A, I asked for you to show off the Conan book to your right, and you showed us the Conan book to our right, which made me giggle very much. Conan all around. Oh, did I? There's a Conan book right there. That's our right. So what? Oh, did you mean this? You probably meant this thing. Yeah. This Conan, Savage Sword of Conan omnibus. This beautiful thing. All in color. This huge, ornate thing. Or it's not in color because Savage Sword of Conan was black and white. But this has all of the editorial columns, and it has all of the letters pages. Oh, fantastic. I love that volume. I hope that's what you meant. There's other Conan in here, too, so it might not be just that. Let's see here. How are we doing? Oh, okay. Benjamin Revel has one question, then we'll finish. What makes reading so enjoyable for you? Okay, it's a 4-hour question. All of the above. It expands my inner self. It enhances my dialogue with the world. It's constantly interesting. It's never dull. Everything, all of the answers that you've heard to this question are all mine as well. It should be everybody's. But anyway, that's it. I'm going to wrap up part 2 here, and we'll move straight on to part 3.